Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Committee on Public Safety, Judiciary, and Homeland Security. We'll now call the roll.
Commissioner Baker McCormick,
I don't know, is she here today?
Yes, she's here.
We've been, okay.
Commissioner Baidoon,
Here.
Commissioner Basham,
Here.
Commissioner Scott. Present. Chair Clark Coleman,
Here.
you have a quorum present.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
B, approval of the January 15th, 2020 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Properly moved by Commissioner Baidoon, supported by Commissioner Scott. All those, are there questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? The motion carries. Madam Clerk?
C, unfinished business. There is none.
No, okay.
D1, under new business, requesting commission approval of modification 1 to an intergovernmental agreement with the Michigan High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas.
Okay. You want to introduce yourself and tell us a
Good
little bit
morning.
about this one?
Tony Guerrero, the Chief of Legislation, Grants, and Community Relations for Prosecutor Kim Worthy. This is a grant with our high-intensity drug trafficking areas. It's $100,000, and it is no match. The $100,000 will fund and support the prosecutor's office in hiring one full-time assistant prosecuting attorney for our major drug unit. We always like the fact that Prosecutor Worthy chases down as many grants as possible to assist in our efforts at public safety. But essentially, that is the summary. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, so we have the money already, correct?
We do.
So you're just looking to extend the time to address this?
That is correct. It would extend it to September the 30th of 2020.
So this is just to formally give you more time to to bring on these folks?
To expend the funds.
To spend the funds, yes. Yes, are there any questions on this? Can I have a motion?
I will support.
Properly moved by Commissioner Scott, supported by Commissioner Baidoon. Are there questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk?
2,
You're welcome.
a presentation by Prosecutor Kim Worthy on the Conviction Integrity Unit.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Good morning. Thank you for having us. And I know that we have been over here on 5 or 6 different occasions before this committee trying to explain, and sometimes with monetary requests, sometimes not, the workings of the office. I think you know the history of this unit because I've been before you many times before you graciously appropriated the funds in, I believe it was October of 2017, and we went up and running in January of 2018. As I've told you on many occasions, and the records will reflect this, that no prosecutor's office should be afraid to look at their previous convictions. We have set up this unit, and we look at new claims of innocence. And Valerie Newman was someone that was with the state appellate defender's office for many years, doing this work for much of her career. And I think people were very surprised when I hired her to run this unit in my office. As you will see, and as you know, we're the first of the state to do this type of work. And you graciously appropriated the money again in January 17, and for us to start in January 18. I let you know during my budget presentation that I would be coming back in and asking for the unit to be expanded and for more funding for this unit. And so we're here to present to you why. It's a unique unit. These cases are very, very time-consuming. It can take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to investigate a case. And I don't want to take too much away from Val, but she's going to go ahead and go forward, and I'll jump in when needed. And anytime you have a question, feel free to ask.
Thank you.
All right, if I can get my microphone on. All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, and thank you for having us today. I really appreciate it. As Prosecutor Worthy said, my name's Valerie Newman. I've been an attorney for over 25 years, most of it in the defense sector. and recently came over to start up and run the Conviction Integrity Unit. So I prepared a little PowerPoint slide presentation to sort of walk through, but if you have questions at any time, I mean, I'm here to help you understand things better, so please interrupt me with anything that you want to know more about. Otherwise, I'll sort of just start going through the presentation. So how does a conviction integrity work? Our conviction integrity unit works based on innocence. So innocence is a gateway requirement. You have to be maintaining your innocence for us to take a look at your case. Assuming someone is maintaining their innocence, we then determine, we do an investigation, we determine if there's credible new evidence that supports that innocence claim. And then we decide whether or not someone is deserving of a remedy based on our investigation. Sometimes we reach cases where people are maintaining their innocence, but we can't support necessarily the innocence claim. We can't solve the crime, figure out who the perpetrator was, or find definitive evidence that this person was not involved. But we might find things that were seriously wrong, that undermine the integrity of the conviction, and we will award relief in cases such as that. And I'm going to talk about a case just like that a little bit later on in the presentation. So, but I think that's important, that Prosecutor Worthy has taken a broad approach to this process, because there are units in the country that confine themselves solely to provable innocence claims, and quite frankly, that's very often very hard to do, and you can't turn a blind eye when you find things that undermine the integrity of the conviction such that you don't trust it. So that's the view that our unit takes, is this broad view. And of course, only a court can overturn a conviction. So I'll go through the actual process that we go through in more detail later. But even if Prosecutor Worthy agrees that someone's deserving of relief, we still have to go before a judge, and it's only the judge who can make that final determination. All right, so how can people file a claim with us? We've tried to make things as easy as possible for people to file claims. So we have an online, on the Wayne County Prosecutor's website, we have an online form. It's fillable. People can just fill it out and email it. It comes directly to me. Or they can send in something via the mail. Of course, inmates don't have access to the internet. So when people write to us and say, I want you to look at my case, we send them an actual application that they can then complete and return back to us. I've also gone out to I've gone to one prison so far to talk about the unit and explain how it works. And I've worked with the Michigan Department of Corrections to make sure that the prison libraries have our application form. So make it easy as possible for people to have access to apply to the unit.
So, excuse me.
Yes,
So
of
a-
course.
So a prisoner can go to the library there in prison and fill out the paperwork or the application and then,
Yes.
and then send it,
Yes,
since they don't have access to the internet.
correct. Or if they write me, often I just get, often letters will just be, I want you to look at my case, with no other information. So in response to those letters, we send them an overview of the unit, which is also on the Wayne County Prosecutor's website, and the application. So again, we try to make it as easy as possible. I don't just send a letter that says, go to the prison library. I know not everyone has access. We send it to them. So
Okay,
we provide everything that we can to help people out.
okay.
So a question I often get is, who can file a claim with the CIU? Do you have to have a lawyer? Sort of I'll combine the next two slides. You don't have to have a lawyer. In fact, about 85% of the people who come to the unit do not have a lawyer. Most of the claims come to us through people who are currently in prison, or they may have served their sentence and be out of prison, but they're representing themselves, and they're coming to the unit saying, asking us if we will investigate their claim. We do get, of course, submissions from lawyers, from the Michigan Innocence Clinic, from the Cooley Law School Innocence Project, from the State Appellate Defender Office, and from private attorneys as well. In fact, something that's not in the slide presentation, but following up on what Tony said about the prosecutor always looking for grant money, to try and help pay for things, our unit has been awarded 2 federal grants, totaling close to a little over $600,000. One is is limited to DNA, and the other is limited to forensic science cases. But we do look for grants and opportunities to partner up. So both of our grants have partners. We're partnering with the Cooley Law School Innocence Project on both grants. And then in the forensics grant, we have an additional partner with the Urban Institute, which is a nationally recognized research center, and that does criminal justice policy research, and they're helping us with setting up a database so we can collect data so that we can have good metrics going forward to figure out not only we're providing relief in an individual case, but are there patterns, are there things we need to know about that we're not going to be able to track without some sophisticated database management programs. Are there kinds of claims that the CIU won't investigate? Yes. We're not going to investigate claims that don't involve innocence. So, for example, I get cases often where people will say, I'm innocent of first-degree murder, but I'm really only guilty of second-degree murder. And, but they use, they're very careful to use the word innocent. I'm innocent of first-degree murder. So that's the kind of case that we're not going to take a look at. The person has to have had no involvement with the crime at all. So you can't be, oh, I was just an accessory, I shouldn't be convicted, of first-degree murder. We're not going to look at those cases because legally you are guilty. And we're not going to look at things like my lawyer did a bad job or the judge was unfair and biased against me. Any of those types of claims that can be brought during the appellate process, they need to be put before the court. We look for factual innocence. Did you have a question? Yes.
Commissioner Basham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My thing was, and it's thrown through my mind, is if you have a pattern, if you have people that are innocent and you've spent a lot of time and resources to see that, this person, all the data that I get pretty much says that they're innocent, then my question would be then, how were they convicted? I mean, it has to happen somewhere. Is it just one of those things where it just falls in the system and somebody that's wrongfully accused and everything could go wrong, did go wrong, or was there, say, in a specific county, there's more people that were convicted that probably shouldn't have been because you've done your homework and you've done a wonderful job, and now you're starting to see that there's people out there that actually didn't have the resources that were tried and convicted that probably shouldn't have been tried and convicted. Is there a certain, does it have a trend for like a county, a prosecutor, an individual, a judge, or whatever? I know there was a case up in, I think it was Macomb County, where the judge wound up getting sentenced, but got involved in a case that she shouldn't have been involved in. So do you don't pursue that once you find them that they're innocent? You don't do any more oversight after that and taking a look at the judge or the prosecutors or the police departments?
Well, we do, yes. So I sort of have a two-prong answer to that. So if there's something that we can pinpoint in terms of police misconduct, let's say there's a case and it involves a police officer withholding Brady material, which is exculpatory material that should have been turned over to the prosecutor and the defense. And we find something in a police file, it's not in the prosecutor file, it's not in the defense file. So, that's not conclusive, but it's a start that we need to start looking at whether or not that police officer turned everything over. If we, in the course of, and we're not in charge of investigating the police, right? Our office has a whole unit that's
Our public integrity unit
Public
does that.
integrity unit does that. But as part of our investigation, if we find wrongdoing, yes, it's reported. We have a very good relationship with the Detroit Police Department and Internal Affairs, and we will meet with them and present that whatever we find, we give to them, and then whatever they do with it, they do with it. But they've been very responsive to the material that we brought to them when we have found suspected wrongdoing. And I will tell you, and Prosecutor Worthy mentioned this, and I'll talk about it more as we go on, but our investigations are incredibly thorough. I mean, we look at everybody and everything, And when we start from the beginning. So we don't take anything for granted. We get the police file, and we move forward as if this is a brand-new case, and we're the first ones to look at it. Does that help?
A little bit, but I know they don't do waterboarding, but the thing of it is, in all seriousness, sometimes police departments, if they want to get an end result that they want, how they got the confession from somebody that, they had them there for 14 hours, they didn't feed them, and it's like, okay, I'll sign it. And it's like, so all that stuff I think is important. I appreciate the good work that you're doing. I appreciate your integrity of having a department that actually looks at the other side of things for a change and saying, well, how do we make this system better? But it just sort of, I just wondered if, and maybe it's for a different meeting or something, but to pursue if it leads a pattern to where, okay,
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. That's good that you
I
understand.
think I understand what you're saying. And there's actually some investigations that are going on right now outside the sphere of this unit that may come to this unit if, once it's finished being investigated by the police or the FBI or whatever. And so if we would have a case, for example, where we see there's a pattern of a certain police officer or a pattern of a certain judge, then we would forward it on to our public integrity unit to investigate.
Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate that. I didn't know enough. I know enough to be not knowing. And it would be like, it'd be interesting to, and, if you ever want to, try to educate me a little bit, I'd be glad to come over and try to learn that, because I think it's important that what you're doing is certainly admirable, but also to make sure that it don't happen again. My thing
and-
is to make sure it don't happen again.
Yeah, and it's a little hard to answer the question because we can't talk about ongoing investigations.
understand.
But we do have that understanding, not only with our appellate unit, but our PI unit who Val interfaces with on certain issues. But that's something that we would be very interested in taking a look at. The other part of your question I wanted to just comment on too is some of these cases we find that there's changes in science and changes in forensics. And that's how we're able to look at certain cases as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right, so there's a lot of causes for wrongful conviction, and part of the reason that we partnered with the Urban Institute is for the exact thing that you're talking about. We want to be able to track that, and on an individual case-by-case basis, when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of cases, there's no good way to track it unless you have a robust database system, and so we're going to track that. Once our database system is up and running, we're going to track the officer in charge, the judge, the prosecutor, the other officers. They will all be inputted, and we will be able to do searches, and we will be able to detect patterns that might not have been detectable in the past because everything is so spread out. So,
That's precisely the
That's
reason why that
exactly the
partner was
reason.
made. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, are you done, Commissioner? Yes, ma'am. Okay, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. When do you get involved with the Cooley Law School and the Innocent Project? How do you
Where?
work with them? Yeah, at what point?
It depends. With the grant, we're working with the Cooley Innocence Project at the front end.
At the front end.
So the minute a claim comes in, if someone has anything in their application that sets off a red flag to me, that there could be DNA, there could be forensic, any kind of sciences involved at all, we flag that. It goes to Cooley. Cooley then sends out a questionnaire that we've developed together that explains that we're under a federal grant, we're working together, because Cooley doesn't want to enter into a legal relationship, attorney-client relationship with every single person. So we had to think through all those kinds of issues, but they will then send the questionnaire and liaison with the client to get more information so we can figure out if it fits within the grant. If it fits within the grant, then we continue to work together. If it doesn't fit within the grant, let's say it was a shooting, but there's no issue about the gun or the bullets, casings, or anything found at the scene, it's, failure to call an alibi witness or something like that, then Cooley will reject the case, and it'll come back to my unit, and we'll handle it ourselves. There's other cases where Cooley's been working on them for years, and as soon as the unit was open, they came to us and said, hey, we think this guy's innocent. Here's what we've done. Will you take a look at it? So it just depends where the case is in the process.
Okay, all righty.
All right?
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Commissioner Baydun?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Prosecutor Worthy. Thank you, Valerie, for being here. I have a couple questions. My first question is, how many cases have been reinvestigated, and how many of those cases we were able to secure an innocent?
We're going to get to that.
Okay, you're gonna get to that.
yeah.
The other point, I think it's along the what my colleague Commissioner Basham was talking about, and I don't know if you can elaborate or discuss that, Prosecutor Worthy. How many cases, or do you see a pattern, what I would call intentional miscarriage of justice against certain people as a police conduct, maybe because of certain ethnic race or ethnicities or race? Are there anything that, is this something you can talk about even?
Well, I think Valerie can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the reason why we want to track this information. And so we don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay.
Just haven't been up for a year and almost 2 years, I guess, now. But that's why we just partnered with this grant to get that kind of information, to try to develop, to see if there are any patterns that we can get ahead of at some point.
I've been watching too much of Netflix, so
Yeah,
I
so-
see a lot of stuff out there.
If we see it, we're going to give it to our PIU and do something about it. So, and
Thank you.
again, it's hard for me to say because there are cases that may not fall into that exact category, but are under investigation right now.
Thank you.
And we are tracking it. I want to make it clear, the reason we asked for this grant is so, I mean, I could create a simple database to collect some information, but the reason I wanted to work with a nationally recognized research institute, like the Urban Institute, is so that we could create an extremely robust database to collect all the data, race, ethnicity, gender, so that we can look across all spectrums to see if there's any patterns that we can find. And I'll add, there is no CIU in the country that I'm aware of, and I've asked all my colleagues, and that is doing this. We would be the first. And part of our goal in teaming up with the Urban Institute is to create something that's portable for other CIUs so they could also collect, because it's a very expensive process, so that it would be usable by, not our particular, no one would have access to our data, but the makeup of the database would be portable to other CIUs so they could also collect this kind of really detailed data and look for patterns.
Okay.
All right.
And I'm going to ask this question before I run out of time or before I forget it, because I think it's an important one. And this is directed to the prosecutor.
Okay.
What, if anything, is being done about the marijuana convictions?
Oh, okay, I think I answered that before. I'll just run through it quick. We have a lot to get through. I'll run through it real quickly.
Okay.
When even before it passed, we caucused in my office. And what people don't know is that we haven't been doing those cases for a very long time. Those cases are done, the possession of marijuana cases. So it's a huge amount of marijuana. That's one thing, that we have done those. But the city attorney's offices have done those cases we probably haven't done those cases for 7 or 8 years. The only entities that we deal with that deal with possessory marijuana cases have been the Michigan State Police and their various posts and the Wayne County Sheriff's Department. So any case that was in the system at the time that the law passed, we dismissed. We didn't care if it happened before the law was passed or after. We didn't want to spend our resources prosecuting cases where the public has determined that it should be
Right.
legal. So we didn't do that. And so, but the problem was that no one was keeping those kinds of statistics. So we had to literally go to every single district court in Wayne County, every single police post, and I actually sent people to every single police post and every single district court to try to determine how many of these cases were in the system, because they don't track it like that. So if we have a case, for example, where there's an armed robbery and there was a possessory case, we don't dismiss those because there's another charge.
Right,
We
right.
generally dismiss all those cases anyway with a plea offer. Or, even if it goes to trial, those cases are usually not being found guilty anyway. But we have very, very few of those cases because we haven't been doing them. So the city attorney for Detroit or the city attorney for Wyandotte would do the simple possessory cases. So our intent, and I don't even know if we're finished yet, but our intent is to dismiss all cases like that are in the system. They're simply possessory cases.
So people who are serving time
There
for
are no
possession?
people, and that's another misinformation. There is nobody, well, I haven't checked for about 3 months.
Okay.
But 3 months ago, and this was done by a statewide basis, there was no one in prison in the Michigan Department of Corrections that was in prison simply for possession of marijuana. Nobody, zero. Now, there are people who have previous, for example, they may have a murder two conviction or a child abuse conviction or a previous conviction, and then they're picked up for marijuana and other charges. So there are people like that in prison, but that's because they have such a record, or they're never in, there's no one in prison in Michigan at all in MDOC for simple possession of marijuana.
Well,
It
I'm
just-
glad to hear that.
It's just not true. So, and in Wayne County, we dismissed all our cases, or I think we're done, but we may be still in the process of dismissing cases that were in the system for simple possession. I had no interest in going forward on those cases.
Okay. That's good information.
No,
I
there-
can't hear you.
Yeah.
Is your, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to clarify if we were getting a copy of the
We can
presentation.
retool some of it. Sometimes some of it is not public information, so we'll make sure you get a copy of it. Not just you, but every member of the commission. So we have a lot of material to go through,
Okay,
and so
go
we
ahead.
want to make sure you
Go
get
ahead. I
statistics
didn't-
and all that.
I
yeah.
wanted to make sure I got that one
Yeah.
out before we
All right.
adjourned.
So another way our unit is different from other units, will a CIU consider a claim where a defendant pled guilty? A lot of units across the country say no. Again, we've taken the broad approach, innocence is innocence, and we understand that people sometimes who are innocent will plead guilty for reasons of expediency or other reasons. And so it doesn't matter if you were found guilty by a jury, found guilty by a judge, or you entered a guilty plea, our unit is willing to review those cases. It's one of the reasons why I think we have so many, when I get to the numbers, we have so many cases. Because we determined at the beginning not to take a limiting approach. Innocence is innocence, and everyone who's innocent, there's a lot of collateral consequences that are attached to convictions, and anyone who's innocent should have an opportunity to have their case looked at again. So is a CIU part of the appellate process? No, there's really important differences between an appeal. So once you're found guilty and you're sentenced and you want to appeal that conviction, it goes through the courts, and those appeals focus on legal issues. We focus on factual issues, which again is why it's a lengthy process to investigate these cases, because we start from the beginning and we look at the facts. So there's big differences between a normal appeal process and what happens in the Conviction Integrity Unit. So once we reach a decision, or actually even before we reach a decision, you might wonder, how do we communicate with people who don't have lawyers? It can be hard when people are in prison. But a basic tenet of the unit is transparency. So we reserve the right not to communicate everything we're doing, because sometimes we don't want to compromise the investigation by saying we're talking to this witness or we've talked to a certain witness. But at some point, we will communicate our findings with either the defendant himself or herself or the lawyer. And so if we deny a claim, I leave my doors, I have an open door policy. So if we say no, when I write to someone who's in prison, I explain why we're saying no. It's not just a form letter that we've investigated and we're not going to give you relief. It's we've investigated, this is what we found. If I've missed anything, you can let me know, but this is the reason why we're saying no. So I, again, try to be as fully transparent as possible. And the same thing with the lawyers. So when the lawyer brings a case to us and we determine that there's not sufficient evidence that we're willing to bring it to prosecutor worthy, I'll communicate our decision to the lawyer, and I'm always willing to sit down and talk to people and let them tell me I'm wrong or I missed something and there's something else to look at. So who's going to investigate the claim? So Prosecutor Worthy already talked a little bit about this, but again, I just want to take my opportunity to say thank you for funding the unit. This was the state's first conviction integrity unit, and it's really a great thing. In November, Prosecutor Worthy appointed me, as she said, somewhat surprisingly to many people, probably including herself and myself, as the director of the unit. And trust me, no one was more surprised than myself to go from being a lifelong defender to working in the prosecutor's office. But obviously, this was a great opportunity to do justice on a greater scale. So there's a little bit about me in here. I don't know that you want to hear about me, so we'll keep going. And my team, boy, I'm going to tell you, we are so fortunate to have a team with really an incredible depth of knowledge and experience. So Tom Costello has been an attorney for over 40 years. Started out doing defender work and then went into the corporate world, then went into teaching, and then is coming back to criminal law, working for us. Carol Stanier has been an attorney for over 30 years, doing criminal defense work, and she's a very, very seasoned trial and appellate lawyer. And Annette is our administrative assistant, who handles way more than any one person should ever have to handle, and does it, extremely well. Janet Knapp is an attorney for over 30 years. She used to be in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office in the appellate division, and she was there, I think, for 23 years. Yeah, over 20 years. Retired and did some defense work, and then came back to work, specifically to work in the CIU. Patricia Little is our investigator. She's a detective. She has over 20 years with the Detroit Police Department. She retired out of the homicide division and came to work full-time in the CIU in January of 18. John Henry, who I think is in the audience, right? Yeah. So
We all know John
You
Henry.
all know John Henry. Oh, okay. I don't know if that's good or bad, John Henry, but John Henry, we love John Henry because he's a volunteer. He just comes in because he wants to do justice and he wants to help out. And he has some real good skills, being a court officer, to help us out. And so we are incredibly appreciative of him coming in unpaid to help us out. Tracy Weiner is an investigator with our grant, with our DNA grant. She's been part-time, but she will start full-time next week. She's also from the Detroit Police Department with over 20 years of experience. And when she retired, she had been in the cold case unit. So again, very specialized knowledge that really translates well into the work that this unit is doing, because our cases are often very old. The first person we exonerated had been in prison for 47 years
I know, I saw.
for a murder he did not commit. So investigating cold cases is a lot different than investigating a crime that just happened. So we're extremely fortunate to have people with the right skill sets. And I think when you hear about our successes, it's why we've been so successful, because the team has a real depth to it. We've already said this, but Wayne County was the first CIU in the state of Michigan, thanks to all of you. So we're setting the pace. Of course, Attorney General Dana Nessel has followed suit and created a conviction integrity unit in her office that covers all the counties except for Wayne County. The next slide just shows you the number of CIU units nationwide. This is still a nascent type of activity. As of 2018, there were 44 units. I think at the end of 2019, they broke 50. But still, there's not, considering the entire nation, that's not a lot of units. The next slide shows Richard Phillips hugging Detective Little in court after the judge declared that he was a free man. And I can tell you, if you ever really want to understand the work of our unit, I'll invite you to come to court one day on one of those days. It's a very emotional and experience. So we look at cases. How do we do this? We identify the issues. We work to correct the issues, and we go about our jobs in a very methodical and honest way, looking at everything along the way. So this is a little bit about a process. Again, we have so much to go through, and I know someone asked about the numbers. They're in here. So if I'm going too fast, or if you have questions.
No, you're good.
Okay, just let me know. So we engage in an exhaustive investigation. So I've already told you that we look at the case, we determine if there's any kind of new evidence. How do we do that? We look at what someone is telling us. We look at what's been litigated in the courts. If it's the exact same thing that the courts have already decided and there's nothing new, there's really nothing for us to do. So we have to have that new evidence, and the person has to be maintaining their innocence. So if after our investigation, we determine that relief is supported, that's like still kind of only the beginning of our job, because after that, we write an extensive memo detailing the trial evidence, the new evidence, and why we've reached our conclusions, and we present that to the chief of staff. And we'll sit down with the chief of staff and go over our memo in detail and show, pretty much always, I will say, have suggestions for us. So changes to the memo, what about this, what about that? Because you have a fresh set of eyes on it at that point. So something might strike her that maybe in the course of us doing everything, we're like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, we should track that down. It's one more piece. So then we often go back, my team goes back and we'll do additional investigation just to tie up some loose ends, rewrite the memo, re-present it to the chief of staff, until we're all satisfied that we're on the same page. It's really important to me as the director that we have consensus. I don't want any team member to say, I disagree with this decision, and certainly I don't want the chief of staff disagreeing with our recommendation. So we work very hard to make sure no stone is unturned in our investigations. And then once we're all satisfied that we've covered everything, we've investigated everything, we're ready to present it to Prosecutor Worthy, we provide that memo to the prosecutor. She then reads through the memo. We'll have a meeting with her, and we basically engage in that same process all over again. Because again, we have now another set of fresh eyes on the work that we've done and another perspective. And so she'll often say, come into a meeting with questions. Well, what about this, or what about that, or can you explain this? And we explain everything, and at that point, there might be questions that we still have to go back and research or do more investigation.
Usually not very many, and these are very tough decisions. When you have, especially cases where for example, the survivor is positive that she picked the right person or whatever. And so these are tough, gut-wrenching decisions. You don't want anybody in prison for another second if in fact they're not guilty. At the same time, you have to go and we have to deal with the family of the survivor or the family of the deceased or the rape victim or the victim that's been shot. So these are very, very hard cases. So I'm getting a little better in terms of making sure we digest everything at the same time, and we really try not to drag it out as long as possible. We do have some cases which decisions are very difficult. And so I trust the team and what they've done, but sometimes being a long-time prosecutor and doing, hundreds and hundreds of homicides and then being on the bench for the 9 years I was on the bench, I have another perspective as well. So that's kind of the process.
Right, and so then, of course, the prosecutor makes the final decision. And I don't mean to say that, none of this is to say we don't drag anything out, but I understand, too, of course, right? I don't want to go to the prosecutor. I can't afford to make a mistake, because if I make a mistake, I endanger the integrity of my unit. And so it's better, trust me, it tears me up every single day to think that there's innocent people in prison and we can only move so fast. But we also
Which is why we're
can't-
here.
Right, which is a big part of why we're here. But we can't move so fast that we could possibly make a mistake, because it's just, then all the people who are still in prison are gonna suffer. So it's better, I always tell people, it's better, we're confident. When we go to Prosecutor Worthy, we're confident in our decision and our investigation and in our recommendation. So here's the numbers. You asked about the numbers. These are 2019 numbers. So in 2019, we had 4 exonerations and 4 new trials. And that might not sound like a lot, but there is no other unit in the country that posts those numbers. Not one. Those are big numbers to have in 1 year. We reviewed and closed 336 cases. So we're doing our work. We didn't just work on 8 cases. We worked on 344 cases in 1 year. So we're moving through the cases, I would say, pursuant to a national standard at a very respectable rate. And it's just we have so many cases coming in that that it's not enough. We fall behind, every year we're falling further and further behind. The definitions are there for you in terms of what's an exoneration versus a new trial. So a new trial, we might not be able to prove someone's innocent, but we don't have confidence that the person would have been convicted had things happened now with what we know now. In exoneration, we're confident. Like in Richard Phillips' case, we were confident. We had identified the perpetrator. We had determined that people had lied, and we could prove it. And then reviewed and closed these are cases where we've done some work. It could be anything from, reading court opinions and figuring out maybe in 8 to 10 hours that the person doesn't have a credible claim, or it could be we did work for 9 months, but at the end of it, we just couldn't find anything to support the fact that the person was deserving of relief. It doesn't mean they're not, and I always tell people they can come back. Right? Just because we say no, if something new comes up, come back to us. We keep an open mind, always. And then the next one is just by conviction offense. Sometimes people ask, like, how many of your cases are homicide? So I threw that in there so you can see that the majority of our cases are very serious felony cases. 53% of our cases are homicide cases. Again, that's pretty consistent, I think, across the country. And then the next slide is the reasons for rejection. So people often want to know, well, why are you rejecting a case? And I also think, it's important to understand 14% of our cases are not Wayne County. It really shows the need for a unit like this. If we're getting that many letters, even though we make it clear we're Wayne County, we can only have jurisdiction over cases prosecuted by Wayne County, but yet we're getting all this mail from people asking for our help.
And wait, excuse me.
Sure.
So the letters from that are not Wayne County are resident. I guess you're a Wayne County resident.
No, the crime didn't happen
the
in
crime
Wayne-
didn't
Oh, the
happen.
crime
Wayne-
happened
crime
in
didn't-
in Wayne
yeah.
County.
crime didn't
So
happen in
if you
Wayne
get a letter from someone and the crime happened in Washtenaw, or so do you refer that?
I refer those to the Attorney General's office.
Oh, the AG.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
okay.
there is no other conviction integrity unit in the
Right,
state, so
you
there
didn't.
really was no place to refer them to until the Attorney General started their unit, and they handle the rest of the state, so now I refer them to the Attorney General. And we have, by the way, a very cooperative working relationship with the Attorney General's office.
Good.
I'm helping them set up their unit and all the rest of that, so.
Well,
You don't-
how are we on time?
I don't know, what time is it? I don't have my.
11:46.
Got another
Okay, so why don't we run through those
Got another
pretty
15
quickly, and then
minutes.
I want to have Mr. Siggers come up.
Sure, okay, very good. So the next slide is just like a highlight. I know it's hard to
Excuse me,
read. Yes.
Just a
Commissioner
Oh, I'm
McCormick.
sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. What was the outcome of the 4 new trials?
Oh, that's a good question. I should have had that in the slide, thank you. In all four of those cases, we dismissed the cases and the person was not retried. We make that determination in the unit because at that point, the unit knows the case better than, we don't make the determination, obviously. Prosecutor Worthy makes the determination, but we make a recommendation to the prosecutor about whether or not the person should be retried based on what we found during our investigation. Many cases can't be retried because what we have found, say it's a misidentification, you're not, even if we've identified who we think is the likely perpetrator, you're not likely going to get a jury to convict that person when a different person was identified as the perpetrator and spent time in prison. It would be a very hard case to retry. So we make those decisions based on resources. Very often, the likely perpetrator, who we think is the perpetrator, is already serving time in prison, typically very lengthy prison sentences. So there's no point in allocating resources to try that person. That's more for exoneration, I guess, than the new trials. But yeah, to date, even in 2018, where we've granted relief, we've not retried any of the cases where we've granted a new trial. So I told you that we're, a successful unit. You don't have to take my word for it. Both The Intercept and the New York Times did articles about conviction integrity units last year, and Wayne County was prominently featured as sort of the best of the best. So I think you want to bring up Mr. Siggers now? So the next slide is Daryl Siggers. I have a few slides just to humanize our work. Mr. Siggers is here with us today. He was convicted of first-degree murder. He maintained his innocence from the date that he was arrested. Over here. Yeah, sit over here. And he served 34 years in prison until the Conviction Integrity Unit took up his case, investigated it. Pardon me? 34 years. Yep, I'll let Mr. Siggers tell you the rest. You gotta.
Hello, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Prosecutor Worthy, Director Ms. Newman, and to each and every one of you. As indicated, I served 34 years in prison for a crime that I've always maintained my innocence. And I had been through to the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times. I filed 5 habeas corpuses, 5 motions for new trial, 5 applications for leave to appeal, up and down the appellate ladder, denied, denied, denied. And then subsequently, when the Conviction Integrity Unit opened up, I was fortunate to learn about it through the news. I applied to them. They took a look at the case. They thoroughly investigated it and subsequently granted me a new trial and then vacated my conviction. They gave me my life back. And the necessity for this unit cannot be overstated because 95% of all appeals are denied, no matter what the issue is, because courts are not generally designed to vacate and reverse convictions based on wrongful convictions. The courts are generally concerned with process and procedures, whereas the Conviction Integrity Unit is designed for facts and the truth and innocence. And I know guys in prison right now who are innocent, and they write me. And when they tell me they have to wait, they got letters back saying they have to wait 2 years. Some of them saying, one of them told me, my mother don't have 2 years left. Is there anything you can do? Can you talk to Ms. Worthy? Can you talk to Ms. Newman? And I tell them, that's not how the process works. You have to wait. If they sent you a letter, and I know personally, when I got involved with them, I had to wait. And even though my case was one of the first ones that they heard, and I had to wait. And so it's a very necessary process. And I just tell you, I just hope y'all will grant the funds that are necessary, because this is a very, very important unit. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
So how long have you been free?
A little over a year. And if I may say, in this time, I have used time wisely. I've been to every major university in the state of Michigan, giving speeches, working with young people. I created a business. I wrote a book, all in this 1 year. I've taken classes at Wayne State University. I almost live at Wayne State University. I'm using this time wisely. And there are many guys in prison. National statistics, as you know, United States leads the world in incarceration. There's over 2 million people incarcerated in the United States, and there are projections or statistics that at least 1% are innocent. So that means at least 20,000 people are innocent, and that's just a minimum. And if you want further statistics, I would suggest that you contact Professor Gross, Samuel R. Gross at the University of Michigan, and they'll give you more on these statistics. But I tell you, this is a very, very necessary unit. And I thank you all for giving Prosecutor Worthy, Director Valerie Newman this time, and I would hope you would grant the funds necessary for this unit.
Okay, let me finish. How long did it take from the time that you applied to this Conviction Integrity Unit before you finally were free?
10 months.
And that's pretty good.
And I was one of the first ones that, and since then, with these news reports that's coming out, and guys in prison are looking at these news reports, they're reading the newspapers, and so they are applying, they're sending in letters, and just like I said, you can go to the library or you can write, and they've been very, very responsive. Everybody that writes them, they get a response from them. And a lot of them contact me because I created a business to reach back and help some of the individuals that are still inside. And so a lot of them contact me, asking me for information, and I just tell them, all you gotta do is just write them. And they've been very, very responsive. And again, but the process to tell somebody who's innocent or who may be innocent that you have to wait 2 years even before, after they went through the long process, the appellate process. Some guys been in there 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And you heard one got 40 years. And I know some of these guys personally. And I see some of them have died waiting while their convictions are being investigated. But they do a very thorough job. And I know that personally because some of the people that they investigated later told me that this person came and talked to me and asked me a bunch of questions. And I know, and I wanted to speed up the process. But Ms. Newman had to say, hey, you got to wait, you got to go through the process. This stuff takes time. And they did a very, very, very thorough job. And I'm so thankful and humbled that they gave me my life back. Words cannot overstate how humble and grateful I am that they gave me my life back. And that's literally what they did. Because being in prison, imagine walking around every day
Can't imagine it.
in prison with a life sentence. Seeing your friends
knowing you're
die,
innocent.
eating the crappy food, being searched, having your family come up and seeing you, being away from your children, and you're innocent. You're not supposed to be here, being subjected to the most horrible treatment, and that's a whole nother story. But I can just thank them for the wonderful job that they're doing. And a lady from NBC contacted me and wanted to know about the Conviction Integrity Unit and what the work that they're doing. And I told them about the wonderful work that Kim Worthy's doing, the wonderful work that Valerie Newman's doing, and how it impacted my life and how it impacted some of the other guys. Because all the exonerees, we talk, we get together and talk. And the city council had a meeting about us, and maybe some of y'all have seen it, where they gave us the Spirit of Detroit Award, where they formally apologized to us for going through what we went through. And we get together and talk because we are somewhat of a unique set of people, you know, being that we've served 10, 20, 30, 40 years in prison. Nobody can understand it. You can't begin to understand what it's like to be in prison for a crime you didn't commit. But I'm just thankful that the Conviction Integrity Unit had the insight, had the wherewithal, the resources to do what it was necessary to do to exonerate us and give us our life back. Thank you all for listening to me.
Okay,
You know, I'm sorry.
okay. Commissioner Bate, did you want to make a comment before?
We wanted to just get to the reason. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
But
much.
before he leaves,
Yeah,
Commissioner Baidoon.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Daryl is your brother in humanity. I just want to say that we are sorry that you went through what you went through, and God bless you and bless your family. And I applaud you for speaking out and carrying the banner so justice could be served to all of your fellow inmates that are still in prison, and just keep up the fight. And I can speak on my personal capacity. I am in support of this unit that Prosecutor Worthy is heading, and we need to make sure that all innocent people are served justice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing that you got out. I mean, it's not something that you have to do, but you know what? God gives us a mission to do things, and I can see that spirit in you that he is doing this. When I was in the Senate, I spent a lot of time visiting the prisons and that, and I did hear a number of folks saying that, you know. I have a friend named Tom Adams that comes to the prisons a lot and stuff, and so I travel some with him and his staff to come. So, but let me apologize for all the time that you have spent there too. As just a human being to another human being. But for the work that you are doing now, the business that you have started in that, and the continuing to work with those to give them some relief. So I say thank you to do it, and may God continue to bless you to do the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too just want to commend you on the work that you're doing. You could have got out and said, you know what, I'm out. I don't care about anybody else but me. But you just went back in full force, and that says a lot about you and who you are. And I just commend you on getting back in the fight. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank these, they made it possible, man, and I just thank them so much. I can't begin to thank them enough because the courts had denied me, even when the courts are just, they are not just designed to search for the truth. They're not designed, they're dealing with processes and procedures and court rules and jury instructions. These folks deal with the truth. They deal with the facts. They got investigators to go out, and they don't have enough. At the time, they only had one, Patricia Little, and I met her. I was at Frank Murphy Hall of Justice talking to a guy whose case I had, been following, trying to help him. And she had just told me, I didn't even remember, I'd never seen her. And she knew me, she walked up and hugged me and said, "I'm Patricia Little, I investigated your case." And so, and I'm just thankful that you have these type, and they need more help. They just need more help.
So are you going to law school?
Several people have asked me to go to law school, but I'm going for business administration. The law is just, it ain't on my side to.
Well, you know it, so.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you know it, and from your experience, I mean, it would just be seems like a good fit, but.
If I could be a
business is-
director or a prosecutor.
And who knows, you could be, right?
So I want to just make, and I think, and we have crossed paths several times that we'll cross paths because we're going to keep on asking him to come. And one of the reasons why we wanted Mr. Stiggers to come and we asked you if we could come is because we have, you'll see it when you receive this, an over 700 case backlog, which is why it takes so long. And we have, and Val tells me that we get 500 new requests a year, cases to look at. And so we are asking here, and let me just, we'll show it to you. We're asking for, I'll just say more lawyers, six more full-time lawyers, 7 detectives, and 1 full-time administrative assistant. And let me also add that at some point in time, we really want to come and ask for a victim advocate to deal with the families who have also, not as much as Mr. Stiggers has suffered, but have believed that they had the right person in prison, and now they may not. And so we will get some numbers to you about, as far as some financial numbers to you. But again, we must have more people to be able to do this work faster and to touch more cases and perhaps find more Daryl Stiggers. The other thing I want to mention as well is I came to Val, I don't know, sometime in the fall, I think last year, and I said I really want to be more involved with the reentry process. We don't ever want anybody to get out and fail because no transportation, no housing, no education, no job. And I really think that my office in the county and others can partner and have a real, true reentry program and services that we can provide. And that's something that Val's been working very hard on and developing. And so when we get that together, we're going to send it to you or even come back to talk about an investment I think that the county can make into this reentry process to make sure any exonerees or anyone that was granted a new trial whose case we dismissed a leg up and try to get some help so they're just not going blind. And I think a good person to talk about that, of course, would be Mr. Stiggers and others.
And I've got Commissioner Basham. But before, how old were you when you went into prison, when you were sentenced?
20 years old.
You were 20. It sounds to me like you've got your advocate right here. I can't think. So, and sounds to me like you weren't just wasting time in prison. Sounds like you've been educating yourself while you were in prison.
I got my associate degree while I was inside. I was studying to get my bachelor's degree while I was inside. But they've cut out those programs now. They've discontinued those. And the best thing you can do to keep people from going to prison or to reoffending is to educate them
Absolutely.
before they go in.
Okay. What prison were you in?
I was in one of the toughest prisons when I first came, Michigan Reformatory. It's the oldest prison in the state of Michigan, built in 1800s, looked like an old castle. But they've built maybe 40 prisons since then. When I came to prison, it was prison. It wasn't domesticated like it is now. But I don't want to take up time talking about me.
Okay.
These people.
All right.
are here today.
Commissioner Basham.
We have a question.
Well, thank you for, advocating for those that need to be advocated for. But my original question is going to be, what was you doing with your life? And you answered it before I even could ask a question. But going forward, if there's things that everybody answers somebody, so if you got ideas or whatever, if you want to talk to your legislators or whatever, if you need, communicating with certain people, I, as well as my colleagues, we're very much interested in trying to fix things that are broken and with still making sure that the fix is actually an actual fix, not just, but the governor can actually expunge or records and stuff like that too, if in fact we know something, but the process is not working or something. Are you communicating with like the governor's office and stuff like that?
We have a person in the office that does that. The sponges it's a wholly different issue.
Yeah, I
obviously.
understand,
But we do have someone, and that's maybe not my next visit, who does that. Not only does the legislative work with the legislators, but also does the grants and the the parole revocations. So it's too much for one person, but that's a whole other issue. But yes, we do have someone that does that.
But if you know somebody's innocent, and you're having problems with the process, and you think there's ground to talk to, I was just thinking about different avenues to try
okay.
to get something done, but
Yeah, well, if we do an investigation and we determine that someone deserves relief, then we can just recommend it to the court. I can't see a judge ever saying no.
They haven't yet.
but if they do.
I just don't see why they would. But if we had a judge, there are states where the judges are not as in favor and as they are in Wayne County. I will say the judges in Wayne County have been fabulous and extremely supportive of this entire process.
Okay.
So,
Commissioner Scott, we really are running.
I don't want to hold up any time, but I just want the prosecutor to know that we are here to help and assist you in any way that we can. And I'm on Ways and Means, and we'll see if we can't put some more money in the budget.
We will send over a budget too.
All right, thank you.
All right, Commissioner is it Baydun? Baker McCormick.
Can we get a short statement about what your unit does so we can put it in our newsletters?
Yeah, we can do that.
And get it out in our districts. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we're always willing to come to your district to talk about this process as well. Yeah.
What I would like for all 15 commissioners to hear this too. If there's some kind of way that we can ask the chair.
If you invite us, we'll come.
All right, thank you.
Maybe we can do
I'll
a
ask the chair
committee of
to
the whole.
do that. Yes,
Committee of the whole.
committee of the whole.
I'm having a town hall downriver. The 5th, is it? God, I should know February 5th, thank you. And this is one of the issues that we'll be
That's just
talking
a
about
few
as well.
days.
Yep.
And I talk all the time about the unit. I presented last night at the University of Detroit Mercy Law School. I'm presenting next week, I think, at a Black Law Students Association meeting. I'm going to Canada in March, so I go to the prisons. So, we want to talk about this unit in the community on a global scale, like at a town hall, or on a small scale, or, I'll go to a church. I'll go anywhere that people want to hear about it because we're proud of the work that we're doing. We want people to know what we're doing, and we want people who are innocent to know that there is an avenue to do something about it, rather than every 2 years filing a commutation petition with the governor that's,
Right.
probably not
So how
Gonna
long has
go
this unit been in force?
operational in January of 2018. So 2 years.
Oh, 2018.
Yep, yeah, it's a very new thing. So there's just a couple other slides I think we can skip through of other people that have gotten relief from us. Aaron Salter, he's featured in the New York Times article. And Aaron was a college football player who got wrongly misidentified as someone who committed murder and assault with intent to murder, and spent 15 years in prison. And Mr. Ansari, also wrongfully convicted of murder, and he spent 7 years in prison. So just a couple more faces, and, we would be happy, I'm sure the exonerees, if you wanted, would be happy to come together and talk to you in terms of ideas or what you can do, especially with the reentry. So Prosecutor Worthy mentioned reentry. It's something we are also, think that would be a great collaboration with the county, a great collaboration with the county. There's so much to be done, working with community colleges and other avenues that already exist to provide free education to people, to make sure that people have mentors and tutors to help them succeed in the education, to make sure that people have transportation, to get themselves to classes, to teach people how to have a job. When you've been in prison for 34 years, Mr. Siggers is doing beyond phenomenally well. I don't even know what the words are to describe how well he's doing. But this is a rare circumstance. A lot of people get out, they have difficulty readjusting, and they really need a strong mentorship, program going on.
Let me just interrupt a minute and also say, I know you're out of time. We also are working with one local community college right now, and I don't want to, we don't have permission to announce it yet, and for free tuition for some of our auxiliaries as well. But again, they're concerned with transportation and housing and all that. So we are reaching out, we are getting to those points, but we will need some help.
Okay. Let me just say that this has been, I've seen these cases on TV, and at the time, I'm thinking, how does a person spend 30, 40 years in prison knowing full well that they're innocent? How do they manage? But so this, I'm glad that you put a face on this whole issue, because that's very important. I know that I am very supportive of this unit, and I will be supportive of anything that we can do to create more funds for this unit. That's why I agree with Commissioner Scott that this ought to be an issue that that the committee the committee of the whole takes a look at and see just what we're talking about. Sometimes it's just you're reading papers and you don't really get the whole gist of it. I think that that this certainly we've certainly got the gist of what's happening here. I think most of us already knew it, but we certainly got another eye opener. But Prosecutor Worthy, I'd like for you to. We talked about the expungement.
Yes,
I'd like for you to come back another time
talk about that, okay.
and talk about expungement and talk about the new legislation that's passed the House. I think is it still in the Senate?
Yeah. And there's been a lot of iterations, and there are some issues with it. Generally, I agree with what's been done, but there are some major issues as well that we've been trying to point out and fix.
Okay.
I want to just thank you again, because you know that I came before this body several years in a row, asking for, we wanted to do it for 5 years, but several years in a row, asking for the funding for this unit. And when you told me yes in 2017, we got to work immediately, and I want to thank you again and again for doing that. Because we would not have been able to do this work. And I say we, but it's Valerie Newman and her team that are doing it. I make the final decisions, but they're the ones, and ask a lot of questions, but they're the ones that do the day-to-day work.
Well, so I think it says a lot that Wayne County is the only county who had stepped forward and produced this kind of a unit. So it is definitely something that is necessary. And as I say, I'd like you to come back and talk about the expungement program. And because I know that the governor has indicated that it passed the House and the Senate, and I'm sure that they're going to make some changes in the Senate. But I think the governor has also indicated that she would be interested in signing it whenever they can finally get it together. But anything else? Commissioner Scott? No, she already asked. She asked her.
I just want to say thank you, Prosecutor Worthy and Valerie. Thank you.
So are you going to present before Ways and Means, the budget?
Just let me know when you want me to, well, yes, is that the procedure? I was going to send you the budget, and then.
Commissioner Scott is on Ways and Means.
Okay, should I send it to Ways and Means then, or should I send it to you?
Send it to the chair.
Chair
all right.
of Ways and Means.
Okay,
And I think this would be worthwhile.
Okay.
If the people who are approving the budget would take a look at what's happening here. Okay?
Colleague across the aisle.
You're on Ways and Means also? Okay, so we got two people here. Okay, so we got three people here on Ways and Means.
Okay, good. Thank
Who
you.
can bring it to their attention.
And anything you need from us.
So that they will all understand what it is that we're trying to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
And
I have
thank
some
you.
business cards that I brought. so
And
I
thank
don't
you,
know if wanna-
Mr. Salters, is that his name?
Is that enough?
Seegers. Thank you, Mr. Seegers, for coming in. And you certainly are a good,
It's the same card. Yeah, sometimes people want a couple, sometimes people want a couple of them. Right, Oh.
Actually, we still have a few
Oh,
other
no, don't say that about my card.
It really was meant for him.
Okay.
so Mr. Seegers,
Because I have a Getting to Know Wayne County series.
Yeah, we still have.
I know. Just pull it.
I don't have any cards on right now, but I found one.
Excellent, yes. Thank you for listening. Yes, He is on the road. Isn't he on the road?
Yeah, so I took a quick look at it, yeah. Yeah, we're still, the meeting's still going, so.
Congratulations to you. Yeah, that's what
That's our fault. But we have meetings still going. Yeah, I told her. So we got,
Because he said, I've been here since you, and have known of you for years. He said, I was in Mount Ryan when you would come up.
Yeah, he's a good spokesperson.
Okay, still have a few more items.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so, all right, we've got a couple more items that we gotta go through. No? Go ahead. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
E, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I've not been informed of any.
F, public comments.
Is there anyone here from the public who would like to make a comment? Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment?
Adjournment.
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned.